My 3-ingredient coconut fudge recipe is easy and delicious. With just a few ingredients and a couple minutes in the microwave, you can make an amazing dessert that's full of tropical flavor. Let's go over the ingredients. You will need 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. You could use normal dairy sweetened condensed milk, which is 14 ounces, or like I'm using, you could opt for sweetened condensed coconut milk. This can is 11.25 ounces. If you've never had sweetened condensed coconut milk, I highly suggest giving it a try. It has a caramelly coconut flavor that I think is going to be really great in this recipe. You will also need 11 ounces of white chocolate chips and half a cup of sweetened shredded coconut, as I measure 60 grams. Although you only need 3 ingredients, I'm also going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to balance out the sweetness. I have a loaf pan lined with plastic wrap off to the side because, as with all microwave fudge recipes, this one moves really fast, so it's best to get everything ready to go at the beginning. That being said, the recipe is super easy. All we have to do is mix the ingredients into a bowl and then put the bowl into the microwave and then microwave it on high using 4 30-second increments for a total of 2 minutes of cooking time. If you want to, you could also add a teaspoon of coconut extract, but I would hold off until after your fudge comes out of the microwave, because if you add it too soon before you cook the fudge, you might burn off some of the flavor. But like I said, I'm just going to mix the ingredients together. And now I'm going to put it into the microwave on high, uncovered, for 4 30-second increments, a total of 2 minutes. I just took the bowl out after the first 30-second increment. I'm just going to stir it. Make sure you stir it after each increment, and then put it back into the microwave. Over here I have a knife to help scrape off the spoon or spatula, whichever you decide to use. It's going to get caked with semi-melted chocolate, so I just recommend having something like a knife to help scrape it clean. After the second increment, I'm just going to stir it. You can see it's starting to really melt now. After the third increment, so 1.5 minutes total, 30 more seconds to go. Make sure your bowl, spoon, spatula, whatever you're using, make sure everything is dry, because if not, the water will make the chocolate seize and you'll have to start all over again. I just took the bowl out of the microwave for the final time. Like I said, 4 30-second increments, a total of 2 minutes. Just going to finish stirring it. At this point, the chocolate might not look totally melted. That's when you need to keep mixing it. Once it is mixed thoroughly, it's going to melt. This fudge looks a little lumpy still because of the shredded coconut that's in it, but without the shredded coconut, it would be nice and smooth. So like I said, just make sure you stir it thoroughly after it comes out. And at this point, if you want to add the 1 teaspoon of coconut extract, you can do that now. This coconut fudge is ready for the loaf pan. So like I said, it's lined with plastic. You could use an 8x8 if you want as well for a thinner fudge. But I'm literally just going to pour it in. As you can see, it's already getting kind of thick. That's why I said this recipe moves very fast. If you don't have your loaf pan or wherever you're going to harden the fudge ready to go when it comes out at the 2-minute mark, then it might start to harden on you. So like I said, make sure you have some place that is ready for the fudge before you even begin. I'm going to scrape this out of the bowl on camera, and then I'll bring you back. Here's the last of it. Just putting that in. Now that all of my soon-to-be fudge is in the loaf pan, I'm going to let it cool off a little bit before I put it into the refrigerator, probably 30 minutes. And then I'm just going to put it in like this, uncovered, for at least 4 hours, preferably overnight, and then it will be ready to serve. As you can see, my old-fashioned coconut fudge recipe turned out great. I really like the slightly off-white color as well as the textured surface that came from the bits of flaked coconut that were in the fudge. Like I said, you only really need to chill your coconut fudge in the refrigerator for 4 to 8 hours to firm it up, but mine chilled for 24. So now I am definitely ready to give it a try. I already took my butter knife and went around the edges to try to loosen it. And what I've noticed is that even though it is firm to the touch, it's not quite as solid as my fudges normally are. I guess the sweetened condensed coconut milk doesn't have quite as much fat in it or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, just work your knife around the edges. Just lift it up. Want a nicer presentation, just flip it over, peel off the plastic, and then start slicing. And when I took the first bite, I knew that my 3-ingredient coconut fudge recipe was a big success because it was absolutely delicious. First off, the taste. It had a ton of coconut flavor, a lot more than I was anticipating, and I think that the coconut sweetened condensed milk was the main reason why it was so flavorful. You could definitely use regular sweetened condensed milk if that's all you have, but if you're able to find coconut sweetened condensed milk, I highly recommend it for this recipe because it's going to take it to the next level in terms of flavor. I also really like the texture. It was firm, but not quite as firm as some of my other microwave fudge recipes, and I think that's probably because the coconut sweetened condensed milk maybe doesn't have quite as much saturated fat, so that's probably why the texture was a bit different. I also really liked the little bits of coconut. I thought that although you probably could just make this with coconut sweetened condensed milk, adding the little bits of coconut was a nice touch. I know you might be thinking that this fudge would turn out too sweet, considering that there were 3 ingredients that had sugar, but honestly, I didn't think this was overly sweet. I thought it was like any other fudge. Another thing I wanted to comment on is that this fudge has a very strong coconut smell. I actually made this dessert for a group of people, and in order to take it to where I was going, I put it in a box, and when I got there and I opened the box, the smell of coconut hit me in the face. It was super strong, it was really sweet, it was very nice. So together with the fantastic taste and texture, I thought that my old-fashioned 3-ingredient coconut fudge recipe was a big success. Even though this was my first time making this fudge, I honestly wouldn't change anything. I thought it turned out perfectly. However, I have to admit I am curious how tweaking it a little bit would affect the end result. For example, adding coconut extract I think would be a really good idea to add more flavor, especially if you use regular condensed milk and not the coconut version. I also think that adding toasted coconut might be a nice way to add more flavor to this recipe, because if you've ever had toasted coconut, you know that it has a lot more flavor than just regular coconut flakes. However, I probably would not mix the toasted coconut into the fudge itself, because when I've used toasted coconut in other recipes in the past, I've noticed that it tends to dry out the coconut, and if you add it to something else, it just soaks up the moisture and it leaves whatever you're adding the coconut to kind of dry. If that happened to me when making this recipe and adding toasted coconut to the fudge itself, I probably would not add water, because adding water to melted chocolate usually does not have a good end, so I would probably just add a little more sweetened condensed milk. Instead, if you want to add toasted coconut to this recipe, I would sprinkle it on top of the fudge after you pour it into the mold before the fudge has had a chance to set so that it sticks to the top better. But like I said, I thought this recipe was absolutely fantastic as is. It has a great flavor, it has a great scent, it looks great, it's super easy. If you want to learn how to make coconut fudge, this recipe is the one that you need to try. Because if you make it, I know you'll like it, as will everyone who tries it. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.